On the night she was killed, 57-year-old Lorie Bray did something she had done many times before. She helped someone. She offered a young man a ride home. By sunrise, her car would be found abandoned on a lonely road outside Laurel. By nightfall, her body would be discovered in a ditch, beaten, naked, and strangled. The man she had tried to help would soon become the focus of a murder investigation that shattered the quiet sense of safety in this small Montana town. Laurel, located in Yellowstone County, was known for its open fields, close-knit neighbors, and rural calm. With just over 7,000 residents, it was the kind of place where people recognized each other at local stores and believed serious violence happened somewhere else, not here. Lorie Bray was one of those familiar faces. She worked as a runner at Cedar Ridge Casino, a modest job that involved checking IDs, restocking supplies, cleaning machines, and closing the establishment at night. It was steady work, and she approached it with quiet responsibility. Outside of her job, Lorie lived a simple, peaceful life. She loved her family deeply. She had a son, Justin, whom she spoke to every single day without fail. She adored her 5 grandchildren. She came from a large and loving family filled with siblings, nieces, and nephews, who described her as gentle, soft-spoken, and endlessly kind. Her greatest passion, however, was animals. Lorie owned 2 rescue dogs named Mac and Nikki. She donated to shelters, supported rescue charities, and frequently fostered dogs waiting for permanent homes. Those who knew her often said she would give anything to help someone, even if it inconvenienced her. There was only one trait that occasionally worried her son. Lorie was too trusting. She believed in the goodness of people, sometimes even when they gave her reasons not to. On September 30th, 2019, Lorie worked her usual closing shift at Cedar Ridge Casino. Surveillance cameras later showed her performing routine duties, wiping down machines, tidying the bar area, and preparing to lock the doors for the night. Nothing about the evening seemed unusual. A few regular customers were present. At one point, 2 women chatted briefly with her at the bar. Later, a 22-year-old man named Diego Hernandez approached and ordered a drink. Lorie asked for his identification before serving him. Following standard policy, the exchange appeared normal. There was no visible tension, no argument, no sign of discomfort. As the clock approached 11:20 p.m., Lorie indicated that the casino was closing. She pointed toward the clock, signaling to customers that it was time to leave. She gathered her belongings, locked the doors, and stepped outside. Her car, a 2003 Chrysler sedan, was parked nearby, visible from the entrance. Surveillance footage showed her walking toward it. Then, unexpectedly, she stepped back, as if speaking to someone out of view. Moments later, Diego Hernandez entered the passenger side of her vehicle. He was the only other person left on the premises. The 2 drove away together. It was the last confirmed sighting of Lorie Bray alive. The following morning, October 1st, casino employees noticed Lorie had not arrived for her shift. She had not called in. That alone was strange. Around the same time, her boss Kathy was driving to work along a quiet stretch of road near Buffalo Trail Road and Laurel Airport Road. The area was isolated, surrounded by open fields and very little traffic. That was when she saw a car parked awkwardly near an intersection. It looked like Lorie's. Kathy slowed down. The vehicle appeared empty. Something felt wrong. Lorie had no reason to be in that area, and she certainly would not abandon her car there. Instead of approaching it, Kathy called Lorie's son Justin, asking him to check on his mother at home. Justin had already felt uneasy that morning. His mother always called him, every single day. That day, his phone had remained silent. When he arrived at her house, the sight immediately deepened his fear. Her car was not in the driveway. Inside the house, Mac and Nikki were alone and unfed. The bed was neatly made. There were no signs she had eaten breakfast. The house was eerily quiet. It did not feel like she had left for work. It felt like she had never made it home. Justin and Kathy met at the location of the abandoned car. It was confirmed the Chrysler belonged to Lorie. The sunroof was open. A door handle was damaged. Through the window, Justin could see her purse on the back floor. Her phone was inside, lighting up with incoming calls. He wanted to open the door, he wanted to search, but instinct told him to wait. They called 911. When authorities arrived and began examining the vehicle, what they found turned a missing person case into something far darker. Blood covered more than half of the back seat. A muddy shoe print was visible on the passenger side door. Lorie's clothing was scattered inside the car. Her underwear appeared damaged, as though forcefully removed. The hooks on her bra were bent. Some clothing items were stained with blood. There had been a violent struggle. Lorie Bray was officially declared missing under suspicious circumstances. The small town of Laurel quickly mobilized. Friends organized search parties. Volunteers combed through fields and wooded areas north of town. Social media posts pleaded for information. Residents expressed disbelief that something so brutal could occur in their community. Meanwhile, detectives reviewed the casino surveillance footage carefully. They needed to know who had last been with her. The footage showed Diego Hernandez entering her vehicle that night. Just before midnight on October 1st, officers located Diego at his residence. He admitted he had been in Lorie's car. According to him, she had kindly offered him a ride home after they talked at the casino. He claimed she dropped him off near his house. He said goodbye, thanked her, and watched her drive away. He insisted he had not seen her since. However, investigators immediately noticed something concerning. Diego's face, hands, and torso were covered with fresh scratches. When questioned about them, he calmly explained that he had been in a fight 2 days earlier with a friend named Nick after visiting a strip club. He claimed Nick's ring had cut his face. Detectives found Nick. He admitted they had argued and scuffled, but he insisted there had been no scratching. He appeared genuinely surprised at the severity of Diego's injuries. There was another inconsistency. Surveillance footage from a different bar earlier that same evening showed Diego with no visible marks on his face. The scratches had appeared sometime later. Still, at that stage, investigators lacked enough evidence to detain him. On October 2nd, search efforts resumed. That evening, a man riding an ATV through a wooded area east of Laurel made a devastating discovery. He found the body of a woman lying naked in a ditch. She was in the fetal position. Her body was covered in bruises and abrasions. Her eyes were swollen. Her lip was split. Several ribs were broken. There was blood in her hair. Authorities soon confirmed what many already feared. The body was Lorie Bray's. She had been found less than 2 miles from where her car had been abandoned. The medical examiner would later determine her cause of death as strangulation. She had also suffered blunt force trauma to the face. Evidence suggested she had been dragged or pushed down the slope where she was found, meaning she was likely killed elsewhere, possibly inside her own vehicle. Near her body lay a small cross necklace. Close by was a distinct shoe imprint that appeared to match the tread pattern found in her car. The brutality shocked even experienced investigators. This was not a random accident. This was not a simple robbery. It was a violent personal attack. The peaceful sense of safety in Laurel was gone. Someone had brutally murdered a woman known for her kindness, and the investigation was only beginning. The confirmation of Lorie Bray's death sent a shockwave through Laurel. What had begun as a missing person case had quickly escalated into a homicide investigation. For a town that prided itself on safety and familiarity, the brutality of her death felt almost incomprehensible. But investigators were already narrowing their focus. Diego Hernandez had been the last known person seen with Lorie alive. He had admitted to being inside her vehicle. He had visible scratches on his body that appeared recent. And now, forensic evidence from the crime scene was beginning to paint a clearer picture. Detectives turned to technology. Using cell phone data, investigators traced the movement of Lorie's phone between midnight and 3 a.m. The data showed pings at 4 significant locations: the casino, the area where her car was abandoned, the wooded area where her body was found, and critically, a location near Diego's home. The timeline was damning. Lorie's phone had been near Diego's residence shortly before it registered near the remote area where her body was ultimately discovered. By that time, she was likely already dead. The question was no longer whether Diego had been with her. The question was what had happened after she dropped him off. Meanwhile, detectives began interviewing people who had encountered Diego earlier that night. At a different bar before he went to the casino, multiple witnesses described him behaving aggressively toward women. He had pressured several of them to drive him home. One bartender later stated she felt uncomfortable with his insistence and harassment. It established a troubling pattern. On October 4th, investigators executed a search warrant at Diego's residence. Inside his room, which was reportedly cluttered with dirty laundry, they discovered something that immediately stood out: freshly washed and bleached clothing matching what he had been wearing the night Lorie disappeared. Nearby were a pair of Nike shoes, still wet from washing. The tread pattern of those shoes matched the shoe imprint found inside Lorie's car and near her body in the ditch. Forensic teams also processed Diego's phone. Within hours of Lorie's death, he had searched online. How long do investigations last? And how long do FBI investigations last? He had also looked up whether there was a limit to how many years authorities could investigate someone. To investigators, these searches suggested consciousness of guilt. Diego was asked to provide a DNA sample. He complied. Afterward, he changed his story. This time, he admitted that he and Lorie had engaged in sexual activity near his home. He claimed it was consensual. According to him, they had smoked cigarettes, talked for a while, and then had sex before she drove away. He insisted he had nothing to do with her death. However, forensic testing soon revealed that Diego's DNA was found under Lorie's fingernails and on her body. The presence of his DNA beneath her nails strongly indicated a struggle. Faced with mounting evidence, Diego shifted his narrative again. Now he claimed that he and Lorie had been involved in a secret romantic relationship for over a year. He alleged that she had wanted to keep it private. That was, he said, the reason he initially lied. Detectives thoroughly examined both their phone records dating back a full year. There were no calls, no text messages, no social media interactions, no evidence whatsoever of a prior relationship. Casino surveillance footage supported this finding. On the night they met, Lorie had asked for his ID, something she would not have needed to do if they had been secretly involved for a year. On October 8th, 2019, just 1 week after Lorie was reported missing, Diego Hernandez was arrested and charged in connection with her death. The community's reaction was complicated. Diego was known locally. Some described him as polite and quiet. His arrest stunned those who believed they knew him, but the evidence was building into a formidable case. Prosecutors alleged that Lorie had offered Diego a ride home out of kindness. Once near his residence, he attempted to initiate sexual contact. When she refused, a violent struggle ensued. He beat her severely, sexually assaulted her, and ultimately strangled her inside her own car. He then transported her body to a remote ditch and abandoned her vehicle miles away. In March 2021, Diego Hernandez's trial began. He pleaded not guilty. During opening statements, the defense attempted to challenge the integrity of the investigation. They suggested Lorie's abandoned vehicle might have been contaminated before law enforcement secured it. They also referenced the presence of methadone in Lorie's system, implying that if she had been using it without a prescription, she might have been hiding aspects of her life, including a possible relationship with Diego. Prosecutors dismissed this theory as speculative and unsupported. Expert witnesses took the stand. Forensic analysts explained how DNA testing revealed that the probability of the genetic material under Lorie's fingernails belonging to someone other than Diego was approximately 1 in 60 octillion, an astronomically small chance. An octillion is a number followed by 27 zeros. Investigators also presented geolocation data mapping Lorie's phone movements that night. Using cellular tower range data, they demonstrated how her phone traveled from the casino to near Diego's home, and eventually to the wooded area where her body was found. Jurors were shown photographs from the crime scene, images described as too horrific for public broadcast. They saw the extent of Lorie's injuries. They heard testimony about the broken ribs, the swelling around her eyes, and the signs of strangulation. The prosecution emphasized the scratches on Diego's body. Side-by-side images were shown. His scratched face contrasted against Lorie's bruised and battered condition. The implication was clear: she had fought desperately for her life. The defense attempted to create doubt, questioning forensic peer review processes and challenging how certain tests were conducted, but they struggled to provide an alternative explanation that accounted for all the evidence. After several days of testimony, closing arguments were delivered. The jury deliberated for only 2 hours. They returned with a unanimous verdict: guilty of deliberate homicide. The courtroom was silent as the decision was read. Yet what happened next stunned nearly everyone present. Before sentencing, Diego requested to address the court. For more than a year, he had denied harming Lorie. He had maintained his innocence, insisting on consensual contact or a secret relationship. But now, standing before the judge, he admitted, "I did it. I killed Lorie." The confession shocked the courtroom. Even the judge reportedly remarked that in decades on the bench, he had never witnessed a defendant confess after a guilty verdict had already been delivered. Diego Hernandez was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum of 35 years before becoming eligible for parole. There has been no indication that he has successfully appealed the conviction. For Lorie's family, however, no sentence could undo the loss. Her son Justin lost his daily phone calls. Her grandchildren lost their grandmother. Mac and Nikki lost the woman who had rescued them. A community lost someone widely regarded as gentle and generous. In the weeks following the conviction, residents gathered in a local park where Lorie used to walk her dogs. Candles were lit. Purple shirts bearing messages of love were worn. Donations were raised for animal charities in her honor. People spoke not only of her death, but of her life. They remembered her smile, her soft voice, the way she always saw the good in others. And that memory carried a painful lesson. Kindness is powerful. It binds communities. It builds trust. But trust, placed in the wrong hands, can become vulnerability. Lorie Bray's story is not one of recklessness. It is a story of compassion meeting cruelty, of a woman who believed in helping others and encountered someone who saw that kindness as opportunity. Her case forever changed the way many residents of Laurel viewed their sense of safety. The illusion that violence only happens elsewhere was gone. Yet even in tragedy, her legacy endures in the animals she saved, in the family she loved, and in the community that continues to remember her. If this story moved you, consider what it says about trust, awareness, and the unseen risks that sometimes accompany everyday decisions. And as always, may we honor victims not only by remembering how they died, but by remembering how they lived.